What life lesson did you learn that you will never forget, and when did you learn it? My best friend passed away a few years ago and I learned 2 life lessons. Never keep people in your life if they don't love and respect you as much as you do them. Never take for granted the time you spend with the people you keep, it could be over any day. Always make time for loved ones. Time is not on your side. I learned this too late. After my grandma died, I was always working or studying and said next week I am going to visit grandma, next week I'll give her a call, next week. I saw her at the family gatherings like birthdays and such if I was able to make them, but that's still different than going by her house and spend time together. The moments I did that, it was nice and we laughed, so there wasn't reason to not visit grandma. Always sweet, and even when I was in the 30s she gave me a bag of candy when I left. One year one was too busy, read selfish, and hadn't visited for months. I wasn't aware it has been months. That was after I checked how long ago it was. September was the last visit and in December she passed away. I couldn't make time for 3 months. Not a single day I could spare a few hours to visit cause career, and I'll go next week. This is more than 10 years ago and it still haunts me at times. She was always understanding and be like, yeah, I know you youngsters are busy and need to work hard and don't have it as easy as we. Even though she went through World War II and needed to walk 2 provinces for food. She considered that they had the easy life. I always thought I had enough time when I was done with insert something here, but always something else turned up. Next week I'll go was the worst thing I had told myself, and I wished I spent way more time with grandma. It made me change everything. I now only work 3 days a week and spend the rest of the time on my family and friends. Make sure to give regular calls and make sure I can be at whatever is needed. Sure, working 5 days a week and having more money for fun is nice, but a bigger car or a bigger house or another vacation does not bring back time. Do I need a Range Rover 4x4 that costs 8 times the price of a Ford Fiesta? Number. Do I need a house with 8 bedrooms? Number. Do I need time? Yes, time is all I wanted. Time is what we get in limited quantity. You can try and make changes in spending less or make more money, but you can't make more time. There is 24 hours in a day. Spend them wisely and don't think others have the same time left as you. The biggest lie I told myself was that I didn't have the time. I had the time. I just managed it badly. My grandma was 89, so she was on borrowed time, but it could as well be my wife who I take out for dinner next week but gets ill or an accident. You don't know what it is you have until it's gone. Some people, most people, have families who love them and support them, but some people don't, and they don't know that it's terrible because it's just normal for them. It took me 32 years of life. 4 years working with severely traumatized children and 2 years of therapy to realize that I too was traumatized from day one. Somehow my parents imparted to me life was a pie. If somebody got some, I got less. That if I wasn't doing something impressive or winning at something, I was failing. I thought the way to be valuable and get people to like me was to achieve more, prove how smart I was, and one-up them. You can imagine how that goes over. When people predictably didn't like that, I thought it was because I wasn't achieving enough or seeming smart or talented enough, so I'd get even worse. It's hard to undo such an ingrained mindset and to admit shortcomings and share vulnerability, but the gradual life lesson has been not to try to impress people, not to be ashamed of your true imperfect self, but to listen to people, share with them, and be open, honest, and vulnerable. My dad taught me as a teenager that relationships should be easy. Biggest and best lesson I've ever learned. Relationships should not be filled with drama but with friendship and respect. Really helped me choose who to be with. Now I teach my daughters the same thing so maybe they can prevent being in a painful relationship. When I was about 9 years old, I used to bully a lad in my class. I felt like a tough guy because he was bigger than me. I bullied him because he came from a poor family, but I'd always had a wealthy family. Until I was around 9 years old, my dad's alcoholism escalated and cost him his job and destroyed our family. I bullied that lad out of anger because of what I was going through, and then one day he beat the shit out of me. Our head teacher, principal, made us sit outside his office for a whole day together, just the two of us. I quickly realized how much I upset him and we became friends. If you don't ask, you don't get. Worked as an admin for salespeople, and OMG did they get over on people. Demanded things from everyone that they had no right to, but they usually got what they wanted. I learned to say no to them and stick to it, and I learned to make my own demands. Sometimes I got what I wanted and sometimes I didn't, but I never received anything I wanted but didn't ask for. Does that make sense? Always ask, you just might get it. You can be the most competent, hardest working, most dedicated employee in a company, but the promotions are most likely to go to the people who have made a personal connection with the boss. I learned that at my first job, and it's been true ever since. It's why I'll never homeschool my kids. I could give them a much better academic background, but the interpersonal skills they develop in school will benefit them more. I worked in an after-school program for a bit. There was a kindergarten girl who was supposed to be doing her homework, but was slacking off and had not been doing well all day. I was kinda hard on her about being off task and she totally went off on me. She said, "You have no idea how hard it is. I have to get up early every morning so I can be at school by 8. I have grown-ups telling me what to do all day. Then I come here, and I have more grown-ups telling me what to do. I have to do my homework, and then finally when I go home at 6, all there's left to do is eat dinner, take a bath, and then wake up the next day and do it all over again." It was a good reminder that being a kid can often be incredibly difficult, especially since you almost always have adults telling you what to do all the damn time and have very little to no choice in how your day goes. I did my best to make things more fun and offer more freedom after that. Don't become a walking charity. When I was in my early to mid-20s, I had a lot of friends who were falling on hard times or needed various types of help, and I was only too happy to help. I had the money, I had the time, I would do anything for them. Not one of them repaid, financially, or otherwise. Instead, I was just taken advantage of, left, right and center. It all ended when I suggested a friend of mine who broke up with their partner and had no place to live come stay with me. Next thing I knew, they were inviting their friends over all the time, often without my permission. They weren't contributing a penny to the income of the household. Their new partner soon moved in, and my house basically became a doss house, and they became a mean-spirited, emotionally abusive asshole who made my life miserable in my own home. Now, I offer advice only. If you need financial support, you can go to the council. If you need housing, you can go to the council. If you want me to provide either of those things, you can bugger off. I'm sorry you had what sounds like a bunch of such shitty friends. Someone who is as generous as you to share what you have and expect nothing in return, and then getting shit back is so much worse than the nothing you were okay with. I know, man. I went a different route though and rejected those shitty people and continued to be there for those who needed me as I could. It's harder, but I refuse to let them win like that and change me. I'd rather change my environment. Expecting enough love from others to have a sustained income of love won't work. Love yourself and you always will be loved unconditionally. The realization of this was huge to me. In the past I tried so hard to appeal to everyone around me, work, family, but one day I asked myself, what is it that I need right now? The answer was love. I realized that I was always trying to appeal to others by being nice. If I can be nice to others because I wanted love, why can't I be nice to myself? So I changed my behavior towards me, learned to say no, and after that my world changed completely. Treat people how you would like to be treated. I read this in a Bible, not trying to be religious, but it really hit me like a truck. This happened when I was about 8, so it really was early in my life, almost 15 years or so decades after I read that text. I'm surrounded by many supportive people and I'm known to be kind to people. I was studying to be a paramedic, doing volunteer first aid to practice skills. Sometimes you arrive too late, some people leave it too late to ask for help. Sometimes the casualty is hurt too bad and there's nothing you can do but hold their hand. Turned out I wasn't mentally cut out for the job I thought I wanted to do. You can't save everyone. Edit, I was. To clarify, I've left the field now. Thanks for all the private messages of support. This is true. My first 3-5 years were hard, real hard. Then in my first round of burnout, I've had 20 years /4 patience. I started doing something that really helped. As twisted as it is, I stopped seeing patients as people. Instead they were patients, and by being only patients they were a set of signs and symptoms, sets of goals and objectives, checkboxes. In my day, the ghosts of people haunt you. Checkboxes are forgotten by the time you are 10 items down the list. I was in 3 abusive relationships from the age of 18 to 24. After that I realized that I keep giving these guys a chance that don't deserve it because I didn't see myself worthy of love and felt like I didn't deserve any better. After realizing that, I vowed to just put my energy into my own life and my friendships and to start loving myself. 2 years later I'm engaged to an amazing guy and we have a baby on the way. To not care what other people thought of me and my life choices. I learned this when I divorced my abusive husband. So many people in my life at the time thought I was so wrong for getting divorced. However, they weren't the one living with a control freak and walking on eggshells to avoid getting beat and then getting beat anyway. None of those people are in my life anymore and haven't been since my divorce. To always wear a helmet when riding a bike. I came off it when I was 9 or 10 and I hit the ground so hard that the brand new helmet broke in half and I couldn't walk for about a week. Luckily I fell off in front of a paramedic's house and I was with my cousin so I was okay, but if I didn't wear that helmet I wouldn't be here today. That it is totally okay and important to congratulate yourself when you do something major important for you. Normally one that blows their own trumpet is considered to be self-absorbed and it's frowned upon. As a consequence, you don't praise yourself after meaningful achievements. My grandma told me that I should celebrate myself after I graduated with fairly good grades from high school and that she was proud of me, but I needed to be proud of myself too. Always assume the gun is loaded. My dad, my brother, and I were coming back from a shooting trip several years ago and we were helping put the guns away and my dad was checking them before putting them back in the safe to be cleaned later. He picked up the shotgun and my brother asked a question that I don't remember. My dad racked the shotgun and out popped the fired shell. My brother and I, being kids, thought it was funny, but I still remember my dad's look of wide-eyed horror before he realized it was a fired shell, and how he carefully inspected the chamber and lifter before closing the action. It was only later that it dawned on me that there was almost certainly a time between packing up, moving the duffel bags, and checking the weapon that the barrel was pointed either at one of us or someone else through an object it could have fired through. About 13 years later I'm out by myself firing my new Henry Golden Boy and a few other things, and start packing up. As I'm about to put the Henry away, the look of horror on my dad's face flashes in my mind, so I run the action just in case. A live round plops out into my gun case. Lesson learned, retained, and acted upon. You can always take more ketchup, but you can't put it back if you take too much at once. Well, technically, you can put it back, but not easily. I learned this from my mom as a child. She wasn't trying to be profound or anything, But little did she know that was my first lesson in entropy. It's better to be delicate in all situations in life than to go too big too fast. Think about whenever you've regretted saying something immediately after saying it, and this little saying could save you in the future. I learned to view my family as good friends. Some friends are worth dropping everything to help. Some are acquaintances that you only talk to occasionally. Some friends are not friends at all and just use and abuse you. Just because somebody is related to you by blood does not mean that you owe them anything. After coming out of a long depression at the early age of 8, I realized that if you spend your time being mopey and depressed, you're going to regret wasting time dwelling on the past when you could have been enjoying your present. So, when things suck, dry and move on and let go. Your life will be a lot less heavy and regret-filled. I have always had trouble with my father. I won't say too much, but he was very harsh as a kid. He would call me terrible things when he was drunk. I've realized now he's slowly started changing throughout the past years. I held on to that anger for a long time. I tried expressing it a few times, but he never wanted to bring those things up and address them. I've always been close with my old man, Grandpa, and I finally realized how much I've been living in the past. As much as it pains me to say, as I'm a very stubborn person, I was just afraid of moving forward. As I tried countless times, my old man was the one who taught me to stop living in the past. No matter what you're going through, someone has it worse. Dad showed my brothers and me this at very young ages, not like in a way to compare bad situations or one-up someone like, oh, you broke your arm, I broke my spine type way, but to put things into perspective. I remember we were in single-digit ages and were whiny about not getting the Hanukkah presents we thought we'd get. And a few weeks later he took us to downtown LA for a Christmas toy drive put on by LA firefighters. Seeing those homeless kids stoked on getting a single stuffed teddy bear or flip-flops totally changed me as a person. Keeping it real doesn't have to mean you stop making efforts to improve yourself or exercising restraint. It is still the real you. I have often been warned against people whose behavior seems measured, who think before they speak, because that is a clear marker of a fake personality. I was too naive to believe it. While it might still be marker of a calculating person, I have learned that more often than not, it is also a form of care. Desire to better themselves, that it is a choice to be considerate to people you care. If you run into an asshole in the morning, you ran into an asshole. If you run into assholes all day, you're the asshole. My cousin always has toxic friends, changing her friend group every few years. Through her revealing her true colors to myself and my family, I understand now that she was always being the toxic one rather than the victim. That you don't have to put up with family just because they are family. My parents, sister and I cut off my brother and his wife. They were toxic and abusive, and despite anxiety about no longer seeing their kids, who had done nothing wrong, it was so much better without them ruining every holiday or get-together. And my parents still see their grandchildren because moochers will always mooch. About 15 years ago I was drinking with a friend of mine called Barnaby. He randomly said, "Do you want to see my squirrel?" So I of course demanded to see his squirrel. He led me into his garage where there was an extremely large cage. I scoured it but could not see a squirrel. He said, "Oh, it'll be in its bed." The sack was hanging on the side of the cage, so I proceeded to go get a teaspoon and poke said sock. I poked it once. Nothing. I poked it again. Nothing. I poked it once more and a red squirrel that looked pissed off like the devil incarnate leapt out of the sock screaming at me, trying to attack me. Never poke a sleeping squirrel in a sack with a spoon. An important life lesson. Just to add, we both worked in the animal industry, so someone offering you to see their squirrel wasn't that odd an occurrence. dry my body from the top down. My uncle imparted this wisdom to me when I was a kid when we all went to the swimming pool. It seems blatantly obvious, but I suspect if I hadn't been told this I might never have really thought about why it's a smart thing to do. He also noticed I was walking along looking at the ground around the same age. He told me to look straight ahead and walk with my head up. Thanks, Uncle Desmond. If the opportunity to have sex with someone you desire, especially for the first time, presents itself, a fully legal and healthy opportunity for all parties concerned, do not skip or attempt to postpone it for some unimportant reason. It's late, my dog needs to go out, I'm wearing my Neon Genesis boxers, and assume you will ever get another chance. A lot of times, a whole effing lot. Those love-making stars only align once.